In the late 1980s and early 1990s, women began disappearing in Vancouver, Canada, particularly from the downtown east side, a district known for poverty, drug addiction, and crime. Many of the missing women were sex workers or had troubled backgrounds, which unfortunately led the police to overlook their disappearances. Despite numerous reports from concerned friends and families, law enforcement showed little urgency in investigating the growing number of missing persons. Officers assumed the women had either left the area voluntarily or become victims of unrelated crimes. However, the community knew something was deeply wrong. The disappearances were too frequent, too similar, and too unsettling to be mere coincidence. Rumors began circulating about a pig farm in Port Coquitlam, a suburb of Vancouver. Some whispered that a man living there had a connection to the missing women, but authorities dismissed these concerns, seeing them as baseless gossip rather than valuable leads. If only they had paid closer attention, they might have stopped a monster before it was too late. In the quiet suburb of Port Coquitlam, just outside Vancouver, sat an unassuming pig farm owned by Robert Pickton and his brother. From the outside, it looked like any other rural property, dirty, cluttered, and smelling of livestock. But beneath the surface, something far more sinister was happening. Robert Pickton, known as Willie to those around him, was an eccentric man with a rough appearance. He wasn't particularly sociable, but he frequently visited the city where he interacted with vulnerable women, often luring them back to his farm. To his acquaintances, he was just a quiet farmer who occasionally threw wild parties at the Piggy's Palace, an old slaughterhouse he and his brother had turned into an illegal nightclub. The women who entered his property, however, rarely left. For years, people suspected something was wrong, yet no one took action. Police dismissed early reports of missing women, and even when Pickton had a violent encounter with a woman who barely escaped, covered in blood, the case against him was dropped due to lack of evidence. Had law enforcement acted sooner, dozens of lives might have been saved. For years, Robert Pickton continued his gruesome crimes unnoticed. The disappearances in Vancouver's downtown east side remained a disturbing mystery, but authorities failed to connect the dots. It wasn't until 2002 that police finally had a reason to step onto Pickton's property, though not for murder. Investigators initially arrived at the pig farm to search for illegal firearms, not realizing they were about to uncover one of Canada's most horrifying crime scenes. As they combed through the cluttered and filthy property, they stumbled upon something far more disturbing: human remains buried in the dirt, stored in containers, and even mixed with animal carcasses. The evidence was undeniable. Bones, skulls, severed hands, and even decomposed body parts were found across the property. Forensic teams identified DNA from multiple missing women, confirming that Pickton had been hiding his crimes in plain sight. It was also rumored that he disposed of victims by feeding them to his pigs, a chilling thought that made many in the community sick to their stomachs. As investigators dug deeper, it became clear that Pickton had been killing women for years, evading suspicion with terrifying ease. The true extent of his crimes was about to be revealed. As the investigation continued, police realized they had stumbled upon one of the worst crime scenes in Canadian history. Forensic experts spent months combing through the pig farm, uncovering remains of numerous victims, some of which were so badly decomposed that only DNA testing could confirm their identities. While in custody, Robert Pickton remained eerily calm. However, in a chilling moment, he let his guard down. During a conversation with an undercover officer posing as his cellmate, Pickton bragged that he had killed 49 women, and that his only regret was not making it an even 50. This recorded confession became one of the most crucial pieces of evidence against him. Yet the case was far from simple. Because many of the remains were dismembered and unidentifiable, authorities struggled to charge Pickton for all of the suspected murders. In 2007, after years of legal battles, Pickton was convicted of 6 counts of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years, the maximum sentence allowed in Canada at the time. But for the families of the missing, one question remained: how many women had truly fallen victim to the horrors of the pig farm? Even though Robert Pickton was convicted of 6 murders, investigators believed he was responsible for many more deaths. Over 60 women had disappeared from Vancouver's downtown east side, and DNA from at least 33 victims was found on his farm. Yet due to the complexity of the case and a lack of complete remains, prosecutors did not pursue additional charges. Many families were outraged, feeling that the justice system had failed them. Pickton himself showed no remorse, sitting emotionless in court as the verdict was read. Some feared he hadn't acted alone. Rumors spread that others knew about the killings or even helped dispose of evidence. However, no one else was ever charged. Despite his conviction, questions remained. Some believed that more bodies were still buried on the farm, while others suspected that Pickton had killed beyond what was ever discovered. To this day, many families of the missing still wait for answers. The pig farm has since been destroyed, erased from the landscape, but the horrors that happened there can never be forgotten. After Robert Pickton's conviction, the Canadian government faced heavy criticism. Many questioned how such gruesome crimes could go unnoticed for so long and why law enforcement had ignored years of warnings from the families of missing women. The case exposed serious flaws in how authorities handled missing persons, especially those from vulnerable communities. In response, the Canadian police launched new initiatives to improve investigations into missing persons and crimes against sex workers. However, for many, these efforts came too late. The families of the victims were left with unanswered questions, and Pickton himself never fully admitted to all of his crimes. Even behind bars, Pickton remained disturbingly confident. In 2016, a book was smuggled out of prison containing his writings, where he claimed innocence and suggested he had been framed. The book was quickly banned, but it reinforced the belief that Pickton would never feel remorse for his actions. His case remains one of Canada's most horrifying true crime stories, a grim reminder of what can happen when a predator goes unnoticed for far too long. Even years after Robert Pickton's conviction, his crimes continue to haunt Canada. The pig farm where he committed his horrific acts was completely demolished, but its memory lingers. Families of the victims still struggle for closure, knowing that many of their loved ones were never properly identified. The case forced major reforms in how Canadian law enforcement handles missing persons, especially those from marginalized communities. Yet critics argue that systemic issues remain and that more could have been done to stop Pickton before he killed dozens of women. Today, Pickton is locked away, serving a life sentence in a maximum security prison, but the true scale of his crimes may never be fully known. Did he really kill 49 women, as he claimed? Were there accomplices who helped cover up his atrocities? One thing is certain, the horrors of the Pickton farm will never be forgotten. If you liked the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe.